I want to know what the hell is going on.
3, 2, 1.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Oh my goodness, we are perfect as always. We never fail. It's 100%.
We have perfection.
Welcome to Screen Share and Chill, a podcast about movies. My name is Kelly.
I'm Keith.
I'm Jamie.
And today we are talking about, it's Jamie's pick. So Jamie, why don't you introduce your movie?
Today we are talking about the 1999? I believe it. 98 animated classic, The Prince of Egypt, where every voice that speaks is somebody that you know.
Yeah, pretty much every single person that has a spoken line is a huge 5-star actor that's won multiple awards.
Yeah, what a cast.
And this is the second movie in our 90s animation run. We're doing each picking a movie from the 90s that was animated. Mine was Mask of the Phantasm last week. This week is Prince of Egypt. Next week, it's Keith's, and we'll talk about that later. I don't even know if he's willing to share what he's looking at, but yeah, we'll talk about it.
I know, though. I know.
Of course you're going to tease us with that. You movie tease. So, the Prince of Egypt. This is a biblical story. Are you both familiar, like, aside from the movie, how familiar are you with the story of the Jews' exodus from Egypt and all that?
Somewhat familiar on my accounts. My dad liked watching the old Charlton Heston Moses movie. What was that one called?
Yeah,
The Ten Commandments.
Yeah, the Ten
Commandments,
Commandments. Yep. Yeah. So that was on, like, every time it was on, like, the History Channel or whatever, TNT, that was on my TV. So, I kind of got some of it from that, and some of it just from mildly, like, exploring my very small knowledge of the Bible. Spoiler, dear listener, I'm not the most religious person. I'm not technically a religious person at all at this point, I would say. So it's not something that's in my every day-to-day life, but I've kind of gleaned some stuff. It's like a fandom that I don't participate in, but lots of people like. So, like, I've picked it up.
Second-hand fandom disease.
Yeah.
It's Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Right.
Like, you hear things about it, but I've never really watched that many episodes. It's put on in the background sometimes, like your Christian TV show.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I get a little Jesus in the background.
Uh-huh.
Jesus seems like a pretty cool guy, but the rest of them are kind of
Dicks.
anyway.
Yeah.
What about you, Jamie? Were you raised super religious? Did you know all about this?
I was not raised super religious, but I definitely was raised with some religious teachings, and I was aware of the story of Exodus. Of course, the very sanitized, child-friendly version, where you just sort of gloss over all the baby killing.
Oh yeah, it's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically the reason why the Jewish people were trying to leave the Egypt, because what was it? It wasn't, who was the pharaoh then? It wasn't Ramesses. It was Seti.
Yeah.
Seti. Yeah, it was killing the children. They were killing all of the children because, in his words, the people were growing too populous, or something like that. And it reminds me of a phrase that we've heard, well, some people might have been hearing in the media about mowing the grass. If either of you are familiar with that.
No, I can glean what it means. It sounds like a horrible way to talk about that sort of thing, but yeah.
It's the way that the Israelis described their journeys into Palestine pre-October 7th. They would go into Palestine every once in a while with armed troops to mow the grass.
And I gotcha. Yeah. Pretty awful.
Yep. Yeah, so it
so,
seems
yes,
very
you are
similar
correct,
to...
Keith. It is a horrible way to describe what they are doing.
Yes, when you say it's a horrible way, I was like, yeah.
Horribly innocuous.
Yeah. Me personally, I was raised in... I went to a very private school and it was very Christian. I had to read the Bible a lot. None of this was surprising to me. I'd known all about the baby killing on both sides. Both sides do a little bit of infanticide in this.
Yes, there's very fine baby killers on both sides.
No, this story clearly tells you that one side of the baby killers are okay. They're totally fine. They're justified. As a matter of fact, triumphant fanfare music plays while maybe not that far, but
it's right there in the story. Yep.
Yeah, I was already familiar with this, and I was curious how much a cartoon in the 90s was really going to tackle all of the plagues and the stuff. And they actually don't shy away from it too much. This is pretty close.
They didn't shy away from a lot. There's dead kids all over this movie. Like, I was pretty surprised.
I'm writing that down. Dead kids all over the place.
There's your subtitle right there. But I was a little bit shocked at that, but I appreciate that because most times when I'm watching a religious movie, I'm able to enjoy them by sort of saying, okay, this is kind of like watching a Lord of the Rings movie or something, just taking in the fantasy aspect of it. If it has some of that stuff, I kind of zone out if it's like a little heavy-handed. But this caught my attention because there's lots of, tells the tale pretty accurately from what I've gleaned of the Bible of the dark sorcerer Moses and his siege of Egypt.
Dark sorcerer Moses and his siege of Egypt.
Yeah.
Yes, that from a different perspective, that's easily what this could be seen as.
Yeah.
He was an insurgent rebel. He was a terrorist. He was you name it.
Absolutely.
Some of the names that should we just go down the list of some of the names?
Yeah,
and just
yeah.
get them out of the way.
I'll just read a list that I have here because it is a completely star-studded cast. First of all, songs written by Stephen Schwartz and score by Hans Zimmer. So you know it's easy on the ears.
Yeah.
And the voices are Val Kilmer, Ralph Fiennes, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Jeff Goldblum, Danny Glover, Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren, Steve Martin, and Martin Short.
And you even get James Avery, who is Uncle Phil, for those of you who don't know, and he's just additional voice.
The Shredder from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Some of us may know him.
Yeah, and that he's just credited as other voice in this. So, like, there's a lot. Oh, even Mariah Carey is also a singing voice in this.
Don't want a lot for Christmas. I don't care about you.
Oh, I didn't realize
Wow,
that.
really?
Oh, and so is Whitney Houston. Both of them also sing the pop version of the main song, but they are in the movie.
A little side note that Val Kilmer also voiced the voice of God in this movie, and I read a small conversation that I thought was such an interesting spin on this. So the directors and producers and everybody, the big wigs in this, were sitting down talking about what do we do about the voice of God, and they decided to go against, by the way, the director Brenda Chapman, very much well loved, and there's a little story about her too. But they decided to go with Val Kilmer's own voice, and their reasoning was they want to differentiate themselves from every other movie that had God as this big, booming, huge voice. They thought that maybe God would be much more intimate, and what is more intimate than your own mind speaking to you?
Yeah, it's a good touch.
So it's Moses kind of talking to himself, which I guess that makes it sound a little bit more, maybe he should check himself into.
Right. It is his voice with, in very low murmurs in the background, the voice of every other actor in the movie saying the lines.
Oh, is it?
Yep, they have a slight whisper that just kind of echoes behind him, and it's every other actor in the movie saying the lines.
That's cool.
Oh. Yeah, I did not pick up on that. I just heard about the Val Kilmer thing, and I thought that was cool by itself. But yeah, that even adds more to it. I just thought they had him whisper and stuff like that, so yeah, that's cool.
Well, we start out with Pharaoh Seti sending out his order to, mass kill all the newborn Hebrew boys, and while they're singing the opening song, Deliver Us, which was my favorite of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty powerful, and this is where, like, right from the beginning, watching this was, you're seeing scenes of, like, mothers protecting their children and door to door, essentially, Egyptian stormtroopers going and taking the kids, and bad things happening to an oppressed people. And it's so unfortunate that this story is now, like, I don't know, not tainted. It's like I don't want to discredit where this has happened, and it has happened a lot, but it's very similar to a lot of what is currently going on. And I'm like, how old is this story? This is what, a 3,000, 2,000 year old story, and we still haven't learned the lesson from it yet.
History repeats itself, my friend. The more you learn about history, the more you learn that life is just a cycle of people relearning the same lesson and then forgetting it, and then relearning the same lesson and forgetting it.
Yeah,
that's why
it's
you
rough.
see some science fiction that has like super space Nazis in 2158, and people are like, "That's so unrealistic. We already killed the Nazis once." And I'm like, "Do you realize how many times we've killed some version of the Nazis? They might not have had black and white uniforms and red swastikas and stuff, but they all."
Yeah.
Picard does a speech. Yeah, I'm gonna bring it back to Star Trek.
Oh, wait, hang on, everybody. It's time for a podcast within a podcast. Resistance is Futile, starring Kelly Gray. So,
The 6 Degrees of Star Trek.
yeah, you'll insert some theme music here for our interior podcast.
And how fitting that the speech comes from Patrick Stewart.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, he's in this. He's the guy doing the baby killing at the beginning. But anyways, in one of the big episodes, it's called The Drumhead, and it has the courtroom episodes. We Star Trek fans, we love our courtroom episodes. But at the end, it's the resolution of everything, and he's talking to Worf about, and Worf is very upset with himself because he didn't see the fascist lying people that were trying to take control of some things that they shouldn't, and he's very upset with himself they didn't see it. And Picard says something along the lines of, mustache twirling villains are easy to spot. The ones that are difficult to spot are the ones that look like you and I, the ones that look like they're working with the best intentions. And then Worf says, "How do we combat that?" And Picard smiles sadly and says, "Constant vigilance." And this movie is like a
reminder of that.
Yeah, usually we don't talk a lot about what we're going to talk about. We show up and we bullshit for like 2 minutes and then we just start recording, making sure everybody's recording is started. Today we wanted to actually chat about what we wanted to talk about because it's really difficult to talk about what infanticide and basically ethnic cleansing of Jewish people when there is currently infanticide and ethnic cleansing being done by a Jewish government. Yeah, I don't want to say Jews because there is a difference between Zionists and Jews. There's a difference between Israelis and Jews. There are lots of fine people that are Jewish. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I have friends that are Jewish. I have nothing against the religion or the culture or whatever.
It's such a complex situation, and people get so heated over it that I see people all over the place finding it hard to let themselves differentiate between Jewish people and the Israeli state and Palestinians and Hamas, and it all gets wrapped up, and it's so unfortunate because these complex issues are what you really need to zero in on the nitty gritty of things, because it is a complex issue, and there's not good side, bad side. It's very, very, very complex, and I hate to see that sort of thing.
You have any thoughts on this, Jamie?
Just in general, I agree with everything both you guys are saying, and the fact that your ethnicity or your religion or your whatever does not have to mean that you have to follow blindly with whatever leader of that current situation is, because that is who you are. Who you are is a myriad of thousands of different things, and everybody gets to make their choice as to who they want to be aligned with and who they want to accept as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, I don't want to get too deep into it, but as in my studies of sociology, we find a lot of these weird ways that culture puts pressure on individuals to conform, and ways that we can also put pressure on culture. You see people bucking the trend, and then new trends start. That's a way that people can and you push your identity onto a culture as much as a culture pushes an identity onto you. But we also see things like, there have been studies, and I don't remember exactly what the numbers are or whatever, but they did studies and they found that there are babies or fetuses that are in utero that exhibit signs of basic racist bigotry. And that makes you go, how? And it doesn't, and we've even seen, there have been a million studies that will show, little black boys and girls, little white boys and girls, and they do a study where they give them a white doll, they give them a black doll, they ask them which one they want, and a huge high percentage picks the white doll. And there was this one clip that I don't know if they showed it to you all in college, but it seemed like it kind of made the rounds. We definitely saw it where they give a black girl, little baby black girl. She's like 2-3 years old, like barely old enough to talk kind of thing. They give her a choice between the two dolls and she picks the white doll. And they said, why do you pick the white doll? And the little girl says, 'cause she's prettier. And then they let her talk for a little bit. And she says something along the lines of, I see myself. That black girl is like me. She's ugly. And it was like, holy crap.
Heartbreaking. Yeah, Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Like everybody in the class, there was an audible gasp, and there were some people that had tears in their eyes because it's even me talking about it. It's so sad to think that, no, baby girl, you're fine. You're you're beautiful just the way you are. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. And so yeah, you're absolutely right that we need to learn not to be a part of our culture and try to learn to buck certain trends within our culture that are toxic or just plain evil or whatever. But it's hard. And I don't know how many parts of our identities right now, the three of us sitting here, are formed by the culture that we're in. Like, for example, later today, Jamie, you're going to watch the Detroit Lions play. Why the Lions? Probably largely because you grew up in Michigan. You know, that's a big reason why.
Probably that, and they're probably why I like underdogs in general, as opposed to the opposite being true.
Well, if you're a Lions fan, you've got to root for the underdogs. You wouldn't survive.
That's what I'm saying. So they're probably why I like underdogs, as opposed to me liking underdogs is why I like the Lions. It's, came with the territory for most of my life.
It's like down here, I'm in Louisiana, and I don't even like sports, but I enjoy the opportunities I have to get together with friends and watch the Saints play, even though they suck really badly most of the time.
Oh, boy, do they right now. This year's not a good year for them.
Nope.
Just because I have friends that are down that are huge Saints fans, I watch them a little bit, and I wince every time I see their byline. I'm like, oh, not a good day.
Yeah, it's a real baghead season over here.
Yeah. Well, I've lived through a lot of those, so if you want some pointers,
Again, Saints. I do not need pointers on how to have
he's
the
got no skin
team.
in this fight. Yep.
Yeah.
I tell you, my mom, when I was growing up, I always tell this story. My mom, when I was growing up and I was very young, it was probably because we were poor. She asked me for Christmas one year. She said, would you rather have a Detroit Lions jersey or Detroit Red Wings jersey? And me, in my stupid little confused kid brain, I thought that meant that you had to pick one, and you could only be a fan of one of those for the rest of your life, and you had to pick now. And I had a lot of trepidation, and I nervously picked the Red Wings. And I tell you that I peaked at like 5. That was the high point in my life. That was the best decision making that Kelly ever had, because the Red Wings have been wonderful most of my life.
As we all know, this as you can tell by the conversation, this is a movie podcast, and in this movie. After the
ostensibly, yeah.
After the slaying of the firstborn Hebrews, we see a mother putting her baby in a basket in the water, which, if you know, I was like, of course, Moses, right? But
how differently that story hits as an adult, right?
Yeah.
She was basically like killing her child, like throwing it out into nature and saying, maybe you'll survive, you probably won't.
Yeah.
But you have a better chance of survival with me putting you in a basket in this river than holding you in my arms.
That's like putting your baby in a little carriage and just putting it in the woods. Mm-hmm. You know? Wow.
Yeah.
Like as a child, I was like, look at the providence of this fantastical story. As an adult, I'm like, and I'm not even criticizing the mom. I get it that she was desperate. They were probably just going to kill the baby anyways. But how morbid.
That's like your only option.
Even this fantastical part where there's sweeping, happy, like music. It's horrible. This is horrible. This is, it's so sad.
Where did you hear happy music when they were doing this? Like the opening song is plaintive and pleading, and then the lullaby is so heartbreaking.
I mean, most of the time when I had heard the story as a child growing up, this is a scene that is painted as very,
it's like heroic. Yeah.
It's the hero's journey. This is what he has to go through to become a really strong person later on. Now, as an adult, I'm watching this in Prince of Egypt, going, "Oh my God, this is horrible. Why did this not click for me when? Because I was a fucking kid when I."
Well, and because of the way it was told, too. She was, at least in the stories that I heard. You knew she was giving up her child, but she was doing it because she had this vision that he was meant to do better things, and God told her to do it. And so she was doing what she was supposed to help her child become the man he was going to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't, I have to send my baby away or they're going to slit its throat in front of me.
Which is very much more how it is portrayed in the movie, which is why I think it hits a little closer to that note for us.
And the clues were always there. That's why, again, to go back to culture, that's the culture I was raised in, being in a super religious kind of family setting, that I never really questioned that. And even now that I'm not a religious person, this is one of those little nuggets going back to, and I'm going, ooh, oh God, the Old Testament really is fucking brutal.
It is a heck of a story. You want to read through that? Like, there is some...
It's not intended for children.
Wow, yeah.
That's for sure.
I wonder how much of this is, like, proven historical accuracy. Like, was there an actual Moses? Because, I mean, it's a banger of a story, being, a firstborn Hebrew son who is ordered to be killed, gets rescued unbeknownst by the queen of the pharaoh, who is the one who ordered the killing, and raises him. Like, that's that is definitely, like, that. It's not even the biblical story is not exactly the same. He is not a prince of Egypt in the biblical story.
Yeah, that did not ring a bell for me. I was like, wait, I'm going to have to go back and look this up, because I don't remember Moses. I remember Moses being like...
Yeah, so there was some license taken to make it slightly more theatrical.
You mean this cartoon about the Bible lied to me?
Can you picture that?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and then when you ask the question, how historically accurate is anything, really? And what most historians agree on is that how many sources do we have about this stuff? So a lot of Christians, Jews, and probably a lot of Islamic people would look at the Bible as proof that Moses existed. Here is a primary source. Here's a primary source that alludes to this man. He is the head of a tribe, yada, yada, yada. But if we look for other primary sources, how many are there? I think maybe there's a list of him within the census rolls in Egypt. But if you think, would the Pharaoh write down, holy shit, the Jews just cast a lot of magic on us and beat our ass and we had to let him go?
Right.
No, they wouldn't write that. So, like, I don't think there's I think there might be some talk about plagues, but then again, like, what the Bible or what the story of the Jewish Exodus says about there being these huge sweeping plagues that were overnight, like thousands of frogs jumping out of the river and the water turning into blood and yada, yada, yada. In the reality, from a Roman's perspective, it could have been there were a lot of frogs this year. For most Roman citizens or Roman citizens or most Egyptian citizens, they probably didn't even notice anything other than more frogs being stepped on. And some farmers complained about them. And it lasted like 2 months, and it was very subtle. But we see it as thousands of locusts. No, really, it was probably just a locust outbreak on their crops, and a lot of their wheat and stuff were being eaten. It wasn't like people were walking down the street choking on them like we do with mayflies.
But even look at this year, like, this year we had the cicadas. Like, it was the ultra brood 2 cicada broods. And look how bad that was. Where you could see pictures where you couldn't see buildings because they were covered.
Yeah, did we piss off God? We angered God.
Yeah.
You see what happens when we...
So these things are still happening, and then it just depends on how you attribute their happening.
Yeah.
And also, my headcanon is the first time someone wrote, like, a Lord of the Rings, and everyone was real into it, and like, man, this is great, and it keeps getting passed around and sped around. Maybe that's your Old Testament, right? And then a bunch of people are like, well, we should add to this, and then you get your New Testament is like the fan fiction added on to the original story, and it's, like, it keeps, like, evolving, and it's like one of those stews where everybody brings something new and it gets low and builds it back up again. And
the Council of Nicaea, King James version of the Bible, these are all like variations on a theme. And even if someone is well intentioned and they mean the best and they're trying to be, let's say, intellectually honest and translate it one-to-one, there's going to be some internal biases that are going to come through in what you select, what you don't select, what you highlight versus what you kind of shun to the background, that kind of stuff.
It is a good hero story from the perspective of, wow, he's being raised by the ones that ordered the slaughter of his people.
Yep.
Brother to Ramses now, who they show them, as rebellious kids. Moses is he's a little stinker, isn't he? Getting Ramses in trouble all the time.
Dude, they're just spoiled kids. They're like the Logan brothers. They're like the Paul brothers or whatever. Yeah, they're horrible. They're like tearing down.
They're basically the Menendez brothers. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. I don't. Well, eventually Moses tries to become a Menendez.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's, and the animation style is really cool. The hero story of that is really cool because they do make Moses, I don't know, maybe he wasn't supposed to be, maybe it was supposed to be playful like a lot of Disney movie openings, but he was insufferable. Both he and Ramesses, which another little side point, I thought it was interesting that they actually pronounced the middle E with Ramesses.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of turned into Ramses, but there is a difference between Ramesses and there was an actual Ramses.
Yeah.
I think.
My whole life I've only heard Ramses, so I thought that this was the same guy, and I've just been hearing it pronounced wrong the whole time.
Yeah, and it's very common, and, you know, like, it could be said that you're just speaking quickly, like Ramesses.
yeah.
What's the difference? Can you slow down the speech? Don't really.
I don't know if you can hear it, but you might have to edit out some puppy dog snores.
Oh, no, I have not heard any. You know what? If we hear some puppy dog snores, I think that'll be fine. The people that are falling asleep listening to the podcast will have company.
She's being really loud, so I'm glad you haven't heard it yet.
No, the opening very much screamed musical to me. I really enjoyed the sweeping. I'm watching this going, this should be made into a musical. I do see that
It's been made into a musical.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm like, that makes sense. Even it seems like a lot of the actors they hired to do the voiceover work, I'm thinking, there's no way that this person's voice is that well trained and maintained that they can do this kind of song justice. And then you start seeing that they're bringing in these big name singers to do them, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there were very few people who did their own singing. The woman who plays Yocheved, her voice is gorgeous, and that is the voice that I want to sing with when I sing. Like, that is what I want my voice to sound with, that rich and beautiful.
Aww.
She does, Ralph Fiennes does, and Michelle Pfeiffer does, but almost the entire cast. Oh, Steve Martin and the little guy. Martin Short.
The little guy.
The little guy. The funny looking fella.
Right. Yeah, they do.
No, Steve Martin is well known for like doing some singing and dancing.
So they do their
banjo
own
playing.
There is a line where like Sandra Bullock starts singing her own, but then as it gets more complicated, it is not Sandra Bullock anymore.
And it makes sense. I'm not trying to like talk shit about these people. They have a different skill set. It'd be like watching a basketball player play football. Like there are certain skills that don't translate one to one. So I
gotta say, Steve Martin and Martin Short, kind of underutilized. Like they didn't strike me as doing anything particularly funny in the movie. Like the animations, the caricatures looked funny. That they were, you know, I
wouldn't be surprised if Martin Short and Steve Martin's part was very sacrilegious, and they ended up pulling it out.
That would be my guess too.
Yeah,
that wouldn't surprise me, because if you think about it, their whole point is to be the smart-ass comedic relief, and they're on the side that doesn't believe in God.
Right.
And doesn't like the Jews. Imagine some of the shit that might have come out in their ad lib, and the executives and the editors later going, no, we're not putting in, well, you know about Jews, you know, anything that started with that sentence.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing that I think is kind of cool is that they actually did partner with over 600 religious experts to watch this movie that were from all sorts of different religions, to try to be as faithful and accurate to the original story without being offensive to anybody. So, and there were a lot of notes, so I'm sure that there was some, we're going to take that out. We're going to take that out.
Yeah. And it's obvious, like, they probably had 100 people that were experts on the Torah and Judaism. So, like, that's totally covered. And the whole story is about them. But it felt like even, like, their conversation about the Egyptian gods, like, there were a lot of gods in there that were not usually mentioned. And they spoke their names, at least what I interpret as the correct way to pronounce their names. At least, like, I'm not, like, an Egyptology expert or student in any way, but what little I've looked into it, it seems like there's like it's kind of like Ramesses versus Ramses. There's a preferred political or popular way that people say the name, and then there's an actual way that you would say the name, and they pronounce it properly. Anglicized way, that anglicized. There's the word. That was not there. Like
you could tell that it was slightly different than what we are used to for almost all those names.
Yeah, and there was like a behind the scenes mocking of the Egyptian religions, basically saying their god never shows up and does anything.
Right.
But there's no overt. They don't like draw a little painting of Ra and then somebody pees on it, or I mean, not that they would in a kids movie, but you know what I'm saying.
And it would be nearly impossible to tell this story without mocking the Egyptian religion somewhat, because basically that is a large basis of the story. Is my God is more powerful than your God.
My God is real and is here. Your God is not real. The only you have political and cultural power. I have the power of God.
Right.
So Moses is a shit.
Yeah, he's a little shit. Eventually they grow up, as you often do with your siblings. And Ramses is appointed Prince Regent. And they meet this rebellious woman, Zipporah. Am I pronouncing that right? Is that how you say that?
Meet, quote unquote. Yes, Zipporah.
Yeah, well, like she's I forget what she was doing wrong. But I remember he kind of like humiliated her, and like she fell in like some water, and then she was like,
being willful and strong-willed and didn't want to go to the man that she was just given to.
Right. She was given to Ramses after that.
Yeah, and like how old school, like you show me arranged marriage and you flip that coin on the other side and that's human trafficking as far as I'm concerned, you know?
I had watched a couple clips about the movie, obviously, after we watched it, and one of the people said, it's the first time that I really realized that they are talking about non-consensual behaviors.
Yeah.
And everybody's gleeful about it, too.
Yeah, it's a really
Moses
rough
is
scene.
dancing around like, ha ha ha, we're gonna R-word you.
Yeah.
You know, basically.
And it's like, he has the look like, oh, I don't really like this, but what can you do? You know, and just goes along with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, eventually Moses becomes a decent person. So, like, that's one of the real heavy positives that I liked about this movie, is there was character development for at least one of the people. So, like, that made me happy. Other than that, you know, there's some complaints, but go ahead.
I would say there was character development for both him and Ramesses, but Ramesses does the thing where a lot of people do, where you start to see that the light go off and you start to change your ways, and then you staunchly dig back into your old beliefs.
Yeah, the dig in was like a
cognitive dissonance is a bitch. Let me tell you, I firmly believe that cognitive dissonance is a big reason why we're in a lot of the cultural and political bullshit that we're in right now. Yeah. People don't want to confront the idea that what they've held as a closely held belief for years is wrong and bad, and they don't want to admit that because there's pain involved in that growth. So people go through long, long stretches of time to try to lie to themselves so they don't feel that fucking pain. And yeah. Right. I mean, I do it too. I'm not saying like I'm some fucking guru. No. We all do it. It's part of the human condition, and that's what we got to fight.
It is hard to admit you are wrong, even tiny little things, for basically everybody. Yeah. Like, the color of that car was blue. No, it was gray. No, it was blue. Oh, there it is. See, it's gray. But it's a bluish gray.
The dress is white and gold or whatever. Yeah.
So, no, it was blue and black. It was clearly
right. So when you struggle to admit you're wrong at such a basic level, which again we all do, obviously when it becomes things that have built the core of who you feel you are as a human, that is going to be almost impossible to surmount.
Yeah. Or even if it's not like that core to your belief, but it's something that is like a tertiary belief, but then you find out later that not only were you wrong, the side that you were rooting for is fucking evil. You were rooting for fucking evil. Even that can cause that, oh no, because I have two truths in my mind. Mm-hmm. I supported something really fucking evil, and I'm a good person.
Right.
These can't coexist.
She eventually escapes Zipporah, and Moses chooses not to stop her. And sort of follows her out into the city, and he meets his old sister, who I'm not sure how she knew who he was, but she seemed to instantly know him. Maybe they've just been watching the whole time from the...
I get the sense that she was. I mean, she followed him to the palace, so she knew where he landed. The rest of his family didn't.
Right. They do show her in the bushes or whatever, following the cradle.
So I feel like, yes, she was keeping an eye on him from afar the whole time.
she's one of those celebrity stan people on Twitter. She's following his career with much appreciation.
Yep.
Much interest.
And so he doesn't believe her, obviously, because this is what we were just talking about, like, well, that doesn't gel with my life. I don't want to think that. And till she sings the little lullaby song that his mom sang to him to keep him safe and to remember her by.
Which I love the musical note, but I have doubts that a baby
would
remember.
Yeah, like a baby.
I don't remember any melodies.
Not a toddler.
That my mom sang to me about.
Yeah. Cooing baby.
Yeah. Like, he barely has developing ears right now. So, like,
but hey, the human mind is...
That's a storytelling device, and it's a trope that goes through a lot of different media. Let's be honest.
I believe he has a nightmare about the situation, and he's wandering the palace and is confronted by the truth about when Seti is sort of talking to him in front of the big mural of the big child slaying.
Right.
And Patrick Stewart really, really, really does a good job with his lines here, because you get the sense that he is somewhat, like, he isn't proud that he did that, but then he ends the conversation by telling Moses they were only slaves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's
they're subhuman.
Yeah, right. But
anytime you're taking a whole group of people and making them lesser than other humans, you're doing evil.
Right.
Evil.
But he says it with still like a not proud, some air of regret about it. It's a really good performance and facial animation that they give this speech, because it's you really get the sense that this person truly believes they are subhuman, and you know what I mean. It's kind of chilling, and it's
in a more lighthearted note on that scene. It did make me question if all Egyptians dreamed in 2D, because that's how their art was. Is that how they dreamed?
Yeah.
And it was like a real question. It wasn't like a joking question, but I was like, I wonder if they really did dream in 2D like that.
Like Don't Starve, the video game, where it's 2D. Character bouncing around in a 3D-ish world, isometric world. Because we do know that the way we consume media and the way we understand language forms how our thoughts are. That's why teaching a child multiple languages early on helps them think in multiple languages, whereas if you learn a language later on, you don't necessarily think in that language, you think in your natural language.
I need just a second. Continue, Andrew.
Oh, maybe this is a good time for me to bring up that Brenda Chapman, the director, when they were first recording the soundtrack, she did just what we call like marking in theater, where you just kind of do a part so that there's something to fill that space before the actual person that's going to do it shows up. She did the lullaby to Moses instead of the singer that actually played the mom. Helen Mirren, I think, is who played the mom.
Yeah, and it was no. Helen Mirren played the queen. Ofra Haza played the mom.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was good. Yeah. She did the marking of the scene, and it was so well liked, and everybody in the studio and everybody that listened to it loved it so much that they ended up keeping it. And so the director herself got to sing one line in this musical, and that was the mother singing the lullaby to baby Moses as she sends him down the river. I forgot. I wrote down this note, and I thought that was a nice little... For the people that made the movie, apparently that was one of those moments where they found it very wholesome, and they all really liked the fact that they could put her in there.
Right.
So, yeah, feels good to acknowledge that to our listeners.
Hush now, my baby, be still, love, don't cry. Sleep as you're rocked by the stream. Sleep and remember my last lullaby, so I'll be with you when you dream.
All right, I'm back.
Welcome back. So yeah, Patrick Stewart does an amazing job when he's playing Seti of rationalizing his infanticide. And eventually when he turns the heel, I wrote down is he says sacrifices must be made. And it's like, oh, whose sacrifice?
Yeah, not yours.
Whose sacrifice, motherfucker? Who are we talking about? Are you going to sacrifice anything?
Exactly. And I don't think that you should be able to call it a sacrifice when you're not the one making the sacrifice.
Yes, if I'm making you make a sacrifice, that's called like doing wrong to you, stealing from you, hurting you in some way,
Right.
you know? And then, of course, we get to that line that you brought up, Keith, that he says, they were only slaves. That started making me think about how certain cultures demonize another culture, and I won't get too deep into this subject because it's a deep subject, but the idea of tabula rasa versus cultural determinism. How much is a human a blank slate when they are born, and how much of them is created by the culture and context of their upbringing. And it's kind of the nature versus nurture, but it's a little bit different. It's more of a philosophical perspective on it. And people that are seeing it from SETI's point of view are seeing cultural determinism, that each baby born into Jewish culture is already deficient. There's something lesser because they are born Jewish. And you could say right now, sorry to get current day political, but you can see a lot of the same stuff happening in a lot of places in the world, most notably in our current context, what's happening with the Zionist army and the way they view Palestinians, constantly referring to them as rats, constantly referring to them, and they're talking about fucking babies. That is cultural determinism cranked up to 11. That's what the Nazis believe. That's what most genocidal cultures and armies believe, is that the people that they're exterminating, that's what you have to do. The human brain is not wired to kill indiscriminately people that are the same as you. So you have to see them as lesser in order for it to make sense. But yeah, the tabula rasa versus cultural determinism is something that is an interesting dichotomy or spectrum, or however you want to see it, that is very relevant to they were slaves, or but they're just whatever.
Yep. And I do appreciate that these kind of conversations we're having are coming from watching a feel-good, what was supposed to be a feel-good musical 90s award-winning animation. So.
I kept thinking throughout this movie, I wish they would have brought this cast and this crew and these talented people together to tell a different story.
Yeah.
You could have told the Arthurian legend. You could have told some story about the romance of the Three Kingdoms from China. There's so many stories rich in human culture that would have benefited from this loving touch, but you told a story that unfortunately right now rings very, very hollow. Because the very people that this genocide and infanticide were perpetuated upon 3,000 years later or whatever, they're doing the same fucking thing. Not every Jew, again, but the Zionist people in charge of fucking Israel are doing the same thing.
Yep, the state
is doing the same thing. So, how did you not get the note? We should send them this fucking video and say everybody should sit down and watch this and think about what you're doing right now.
But I think that's the thing, is that they've quote unquote lived it. They've grown up with this idea that they were persecuted throughout their lifetime, and therefore it takes away, again, the Zionist view, it takes away their culpability because they were victims, so therefore they cannot be perpetrators.
And what does the Bible teach us? If we look at this as a lesson on how to deal with these kind of things, if somebody tries to commit an infanticide upon you, commit an infanticide upon them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's their answer, is to just completely terrorize and kill Egyptians until they acquiesce and get their way.
There's a reason why the Old Testament Bible, like the main takeaway from it, most people take away, is the eye for an eye.
But for, what we all know now, that leaves everybody blind.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to stop the cycle of violence and anger.
I like the do unto others as you would have them do unto you bit more than I like the eye for an eye.
Yeah, one has a little bit more compassion.
I don't know. I'm kind of petty. I like both.
I understand. I understand eye for an eye.
I'm all for do unto others as they would do unto you, but then I do unto them as they did unto me as well.
But if nothing else, what's happening in Gaza right now should be a sign to us that this is what happens if you let that eye for an eye go too far.
Right.
And we know that as human beings, it's very easy to slip into that, because once you start seeing the other side as they are inherently bad for whatever reason, insert reason here, then you kind of lose a little bit of your humanity, I think is how Picard might have said it. A lot of times when I'm forced with moral quandaries, I think, what would Picard do? And Picard would look at this and go, you lose your humanity the moment you take away somebody else's kind of thing.
See, you think you're not religious. You are. Your religion is just Star Trek.
Yeah.
I'm Trek-ligious.
So the next day, Moses sees the Egyptians abusing and whipping a slave, and he disrupts this now because he's he's aware that he, it's another thing is, it's fine when it doesn't affect me, but now that I know that I'm a Hebrew, I have to put an end to this.
Yeah. Wait a minute. This thing that's been happening all along could be happening to me.
My note here is literally, suddenly the Jewish people become actual people.
Right.
That is the note I wrote.
Yeah, they were just fucking slaves and they didn't really mean that much to you before, but now all of a sudden it's holy shit. And then, like, he confronts his brother about the fact that they're not, in the same family. And the thing that kept going through my mind, he's like, no, we're definitely brothers, Moses. We're definitely brothers. And I wanted Moses to say back, can't you tell? You and father have the same British accent. I have an American accent.
Yeah.
If we're following the Star Wars rules, you're Imperial and I'm a rebel.
Yeah,
So,
right.
funny how the British accent always ends up being the Imperial bad guys. Huh. I wonder where that cliche came from. Fast forward 50 years, all the imperialists will have American accents.
So he does push the slaver to his death and sort of flees and basically in exile, despite Ramses' pleas. And he ends up staying with his old sister and her husband, Jeff Goldblum.
And Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
No, it's her brother. It's their brother. It's Aaron and Miriam are his brother and sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So So he lucked out. His other brother is Jeff Goldblum.
I was just hoping for that Jeff Goldblum, like, stutter, like, what did you think? You could just, stay here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Something, but Jeff Goldblum just gave a very straight performance. You can tell it's his voice, but not a whole lot of his actual, like,
There's a little
signature
of it.
personality.
It's not Jeff Goldblum playing Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, and that's fine. Fine. I would have probably criticized it if they went too far the other way and it was Jeff Goldblum existing in Egypt. I would be like,
right.
That's weird. Patrick Stewart wasn't Patrick Stewart. He was a fucking evil version of himself, so cool.
So yeah, Moses spends his life there, becomes a shepherd, falls in love with the rebellious quote-unquote woman, Zipporah.
This time she consents, so it's okay.
Yeah, she was into it instead of it being forced upon her. They get married, and one day he discovers himself a little thing we know as the burning bush, and starts talking to himself, as we've established.
Some people call that gonorrhea.
I knew that was coming. I was like waiting for the STD joke to come out of that.
Yeah, if you've got a burning bush, please see your medical
Moses
professional.
went into the desert and got an STD. That's where this all comes from.
Well, he did sleep with that woman for the first time,
Right.
so maybe there was...
Got the burning bush. That's how these things happen. So he talks to God.
Let's be real honest here. Out of the two of them, my guess is that the one that was more promiscuous would have been Moses.
Oh yeah, he raised a noble male.
Yeah,
like
right.
he was probably getting laid all over. Probably having a lot of non-consensual sex with slaves.
Exactly.
Everywhere is probably what he was going with.
If anything, he gave her the burning bush.
Yeah, chances are. Yep.
Well, however it happened, he did encounter it. And honestly, I was slightly checked out after the opening song, The Deliver Us, which is really fucking good and still like echoes in my head daily since we watched this. I was a little checked out because I was like, okay, religious story, I'm not overly into it. Until God talks to Moses and gives him his special sorcerer powers and tells him that he's got his back and it's time to smite Egypt. And then I was interested because, man, the second half of this movie is really dark and has some really, if you're, whether or not you are a believer or not, some cool, feats. I just treat this kind of thing personally as like cool fantasy stuff. Because this is
he's just OG Gandalf.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's very Gandalfy. So what is he? What do we get from him? We get the water
plagues.
turns into blood, and the frog plague, and
Locusts,
they have the whole
boils.
Wiping the sheep's blood on your door,
Uh-huh.
so that the spirit that enters knows not to enter your house.
Is my favorite song. I love the chants while all the plagues are going on. Oh my gosh, it's so powerful.
The plagues that are listed are water turning to blood, frogs, lice, flies, livestock pestilence, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and then the last one is the killing of firstborn children.
Yeah, well, hey, look what we've come back to.
Yeah, I mean, that'll turn your society upside down. But I mean, and so like part of the problem that I had with the framing of this movie too is that at one point Moses has this like triumphant where he says what he's going to do, his declaration of purpose, his I am song or whatever. And he says, I will smite Egypt. And when he says this, there's proud fanfare music playing in the background.
Right.
And I'm like, that's the message really is when somebody does you wrong, beat the fuck out of them. Beat the shit out of them
Kill their
until they
kids.
are kowtowed and they are running away and they are afraid and they are crying and they are begging for forgiveness. And then you get what you want from them and leave them alone. And I'm like, I'm not sure. But then again, I don't know. Being kind of an a-religious person, the Bible sometimes is the Old Testament, especially. Like if people that are fans of the Bible, Christians, whatever, then the New Testament is when things start to get good. Is when God is like he gets a PR facelift because the God of the Old Testament, to quote Richard Dawkins, is a horrible person. I mean, that's not a quote, but he says he has this long thing about the God of the Old Testament is petulant and arrogant and juvenile and yada yada yada, and it's. I don't know. Even if you are a believer in God, then it's like, that's just men's interpretation. And that's men's interpretation over generations and generations. How many filters? If you took a picture of your face and put it through 75 fucking Snapchat filters, it wouldn't look like you anymore.
Right.
And people are most likely to create the deity in their own image. You're always going to sway it a little bit towards yourself.
Yeah, and at that time in their lives, they didn't understand the nuance of, like, what we're talking about, cultural determinism, and all that stuff was not even, it was survival of the fittest. So, like, the hero story did end with the good guy beating the fuck out of the bad guy.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Yeah, that's all
Hell,
you had.
look at most of our action movies in the 80s. They haven't changed that much. When Jean-Claude Van Damme gets the shit beat out of him for the first act in whatever movie, in the second act, he trains and he comes back and he beats the fuck out of it. Yeah, Bloodsport or Kickboxer or whatever,
In the 80s? Can we talk about John Wick for a minute?
Yeah, exactly. Good point. But I mean, John Wick, does he get the shit beat out of him at some point or does he just start in God mode?
They kill his dog. You might as well. Like, you're better off beating the shit out of somebody than killing your dog.
It's funny. One dog dies in one movie and that spawns a franchise of like 5 tirades.
Billions dead.
No matter what he does, somebody could say, what happens in the 5th movie? It doesn't matter. They killed his dog.
Right. Right.
Fully support that.
I really, really, really like the scene where he is making his proclamation to Ramses, and the dude, Dark Sorcerer Moses, he even has like a magic staff. So he he turns it into a snake, and they're like making fun of him. They're like, look at our power, and there's 2 snakes, and everyone disregards him. But I appreciate the subtlety that in the background, his staff snake actually eats their snakes, like his...
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, no, it wins.
Oh, cool.
Even while the public spectacle is already like, moved on because they're like, there's nothing here. The
good
real
guys can't lose ever.
Right. And so the real strength was in, if you paid attention, was in Moses's staff snake. So
yeah,
I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the plagues were done a lot quicker than I expected them, at least like in my interpretation. I don't know. It's been so many years since I've read the Bible, but I thought the plagues took place over a pretty decent period of time.
Yeah,
like
but then you wouldn't get this badass magical montage that we had.
Yeah, and that's why it's like, I understand for artistic purposes, but...
I always got the sense that they were pretty much back to back to back.
Yeah, but I thought it was a period of years, right?
Yeah, but it
really
was...
show
how long did the plagues of Egypt last?
Good.
Only 40 days.
See? I thought it was like
40 days.
Like because again, if you're going to go after your enemy, you have to absolutely kowtow him and make sure that there is no bounce back period.
I stand correct.
I thought I thought we would spend more time on it. I don't know, but
I mean, it's pretty dark, and it is a kids' movie, so... Right,
which we end the plague with him finally breaking Ramses' will by having all the firstborn killed, just like was
by killing
perpetrated.
his quote-unquote nephew.
Yeah, we're done upon the Hebrews, now I'm gonna do it to you, because...
One of the lines from one of the songs is, I send the horde, thus saith the Lord.
Yeah.
And I'm like... God is dropping some sick bars, and that's pretty hardcore. That's cold, man. That's ice cold. I send the horde, thus saith the Lord. And then my next note is cycle of violence.
Yep.
Like, we need to have a talk with God. God needs to sit down and talk about his feelings of anger and revenge. And where does that come from? Did you not get enough love when you were a child? Where's your daddy? Who is your daddy? And what does he do?
I did like, when, and we kind of went past this, but I'm going to go back to it, when he meets up with Miriam and Aaron literally says to Moses, when did you start caring? Was it when you found out you were one of us? Yes, that is exactly when he started caring. Aaron, thank you for pointing that out.
Aaron was right. Yeah. Aaron was right all along.
That is exactly when he started caring.
It's funny that one comedy skit has ruined the way I see the name Aaron. Even if it's not spelled out. If somebody says, hey, Aaron, I'm like, who? You mean Aaron? Yeah. No.
And I liked the note that Moses said to Ramesses right at the end, that no kingdom should be built on the back of slaves. Like, they made sure to make that a point of saying that. Yes.
I am confusion. America, explain!
We're recording this live from the United States of America.
Yes.
Completely developed on the blood, sweat, and tears of slaves.
Yes. And then also that, I don't know if anybody else caught it. I caught it. I really liked the touch. When Ramesses and Moses are having this final chat after God has killed the firstborn of all the firstborns of Egypt, when Ramesses is giving in, you can hear just this incessant, horrible wailing in the background of just like broken-hearted parents, and it was so powerful to me, like to hear that, because you got the sense that it was the whole land just
Yeah, this movie does not shy away from the heavy and dark stuff, surprisingly.
No, it takes itself seriously, and like that's why I'm saying like all of the elements that make up this movie, well done. Bravo to everybody involved. Everybody, like, I cannot think of like a weak spot in the creation of this.
Yeah.
I just wish it was a little bit different story that they told, and I keep coming back to that. But if any other story, not any other story, but there are a lot of other stories in human history that you could have put this talent behind, and it would have been a generational movie. It would have been once in a lifetime. It would have been a Lord of the Rings cultural touchstone type thing. But they chose this very specific religious one that even at the time was kind of like, yeah, whatever. But now, 20, 30 years later, I'm looking back on it going, how the fuck did you miss the point of your entire fucking culture? Like, your culture is built on this. And
it's so frustrating. Irony is dead.
Well, and the movie is considered to be generally a flop in the beginning because it did not make nearly enough money. And people are like, well, how come it's such a great movie? Can we go back to that cast? Like, the movie, how was the how were you thinking that you were going to make this money back in good time?
Because it was a Bible movie. As a child, I wouldn't have wanted to see it. I wanted to see Aladdin, much more than I wanted to see this. Yep. And you could be argued that this was better made than Aladdin. Maybe the songs weren't quite as good, but
seriously, how did you expect with that cast that you were going to make money on a movie? You had to have spent a fortune on that cast.
Yeah, even if they took lower price.
Because none of them were like new and unknowns at that time, except for maybe Sandra Bullock was a little bit on the lesser known side at that point.
I'm kind of with you, Kelly, because like you can.
No, this was after Lady Hawk, so she was already hugely.
No, that's Michelle Pfeiffer. Sandra Bullock had nothing to do with Lady Hawk.
No, sorry, my bad. I was confused.
She didn't taint herself.
You can really tell that DreamWorks was kind of like gunning for Disney, like it's like Disney isn't the only one who can do this, and they did such a good job. And I'm kind of with Kelly, like, man, if only it had been something a little different than this particular tale. It could have really taken off, and it's not to discredit the art and craft of this movie because it is very extremely well done.
Also, like, you set yourself up, like, that's great. You showed that you could take on Disney, but then you have to maintain that level,
right?
And that's hard to do with what you put out first.
Well, and if Disney is any indication, all you gotta do is come out with one good one, then you can release a bunch of straight-to-DVD ones with alternate cast, and it's totally fine. People will still buy them.
And then decades later, live-action versions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen those yet. I don't even know if I like them or not because I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, I have not seen a one.
I saw Aladdin. That was the only one.
To speak on your point about how popular it was, this movie, the weekend that it came out, it was number 2 at the box office.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 was You've Got Mail.
Mm-hmm.
It lost to You've Got Mail.
Mm-hmm.
It lost to a rom-com starring Tom Hanks and Mel Griffith or Meg Ryan or whoever.
Mel Griffith? Who the hell is Mel Griffith?
Melanie Griffith.
Okay. Melanie.
Kurt Russell.
Mel. He's just. He's
good
close.
old Mel.
Oh,
You know.
yeah, we go way back. Yeah. Yeah, when I was a child, I spoke to a ghost that knew her. Kind of thing. Don't worry.
Creepy Kelly comes back.
I also thought it was funny that Ralph Fiennes dies so much epically in movies that he's like the epic version of Sean Bean.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
He's the villain version of that.
That scene, that parting of the Red Sea, that took 10 animators 2 years to do that. That's how detailed that one was.
Yeah, I mean, it looked great. That was a good sequence.
It was a good sequence.
It was beautiful and epic, and like, I guess part of me would, if I saw this movie in the 90s, I would probably be a little upset thinking, I wish they would do the Lord of the Rings like this.
Yep.
And then we got a live action Lord of the Rings a few years later that is still like
a masterpiece.
Yeah, it is the grading that we use all future movies kind of thing. So I still got my wish, but like, how many stories like that I wish would get this? I mean, we could do if we sat down, I could list 5 different IPs and franchises that if they got this level of treatment would be, in my opinion. But then again, the thing that sold them to all these people, the fact that it was a Bible story. Everybody knows the story of Moses. It's culturally relevant. Most of our culture is one of the Judeo-Christian religions, blah, 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 blah. But, did it sell? No. I don't know. I generally don't go to the theater to watch a Bible story.
I think it sold. I just think that they spent so much making it that it was going to be hard for it to ever be
It was
considered.
number 2 to You've Got Mail, Jamie.
But it's still a kids movie. Like, kids movies very rarely top the box office when there is a non-kids movie out there.
And it's unfortunate because this level of production and this level of masterful work really should have been rewarded. And unfortunately, I think they took the lesson from the box office that no, we can't do this kind of shit anymore. This was way too expensive, way too involving, and it didn't have the huge payout that we wanted. And that sucks because we could have used more of these. I wish they would have made a dozen movies. What if they did 10 movies and each of the 10 of them were stories from different religions around the world and you learned a little bit about different cultures, religions? That would have been fucking incredible. And that could have like set up a whole generation of anthropologists by itself. So
it has gone on to be regarded as one of the greatest animated features of all time since then.
Which is warranted. It really is a very well done movie.
Yeah.
And it's pre significant use of computers, it's all hand cell animated. It's it is pretty gorgeous to behold.
In one time I did a dinner theater type thing where I played a drunk priest where I take my pants off halfway through the show.
As priests always do,
Yes, my character was a drunk, lecherous priest. And at one point when I'm half naked, standing in the middle of the audience and just acting completely wasted, one of the things I say to the people that I'm arguing with is, "Let my people go!" And every time I hear Moses say that line, I imagine the drunk priest with his pants around his ankles screaming to the congregation, "Let my people go."
Well, it is one of the most quoted lines ever, and used in so many irreverent ways.
Yeah, I played that part for like a year, and it's stuck in the back of my mind somewhere, like any part that you play for a while. So those are our notes for the primary story of Prince of Egypt. We were a little bit divisive on it. We definitely appreciate a lot of good things. We have a couple questions that we want to ask. The first one we want to ask is, what would be the popcorn bucket?
It's the cradle, right? The river
basket?
cradle.
Oh, I was thinking like a chariot, but you might be right. Yeah,
I think it's Seti's head.
Seti's head?
Well, the monument, because there's a monument to Seti is in the background. Minus the nose.
I thought you were like saying like a skull that you're reaching into. The movie is all about the cycle of violence and beat the fuck out of your enemies. So what better way to celebrate that than here's a human skull, reach into it to get your popcorn. But yeah, I get you. Yeah, that would be pretty good.
Uh-oh, lost Keith. I did learn in this movie, this is where I learned that I can't spell Egypt.
Hey, I can't spell rhythm. As much as I have used it in my writing. I can't spell. I'm right there with you. It's the Y. It's the Y that throws us off.
Why?
There's so many words that I struggle with.
A couple of one, like I always fuck up the I and E in
Yep.
receive and rhythm. Those are, yep.
I and E's in general.
Most of the time I'm decent because, okay, so I learned how to sing German opera.
Uh-huh.
And when you're singing German opera, you always go with the second vowel. You don't even pay attention to the first one. So I got kind of used to that. So then when I start doing received, I want to spell it C-I-E because sieved is...
Yeah,
and
I can
I'm like,
absolutely
it's
follow
other
the
way around.
German. Because I took a year of German. I can follow the German spelling, but if it doesn't follow the German spelling, I'm probably going to be wrong.
"12 seconds later."
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back!
What's the last
Okay,
thing
so
heard
you
me
were
say?
saying...
We finished talking about the popcorn buckets.
Yeah, you sound like you have one more thing to add to the popcorn bucket.
Oh, I was gonna say it's SETI's head, and the way you pay for it is halfway through the movie. The theater workers come in and kill your firstborn.
Okay. Well, I mean, that is true to the the message of the movie.
Yep.
If somebody's doing something wrong, the first you build up to it, but eventually killing their children is totally a viable political option.
in a less violent and bloody way. You could do something along those lines, like there's those museums you go to, like the Holocaust Museum, where you get a card that tells you who you are, and you find out at some point whether or not you survived the Holocaust. Like, you could do something along those lines.
Oh, right. Halfway through the bucket, it's like your kid is a goner. There's like a little card in there. Yeah. Okay. That works. What about the Muppet question? Does that work for an animated movie? I guess we did it with Batman.
I was just thinking about that, but I mean, yeah, it's there's still. I think it would be funny to have everybody be a Muppet except for Aaron. Having Jeff Goldblum's character is the only one that's still like a normal
I don't know
person.
if that works because Jeff Goldblum is basically a live Muppet.
That's what I appreciate about that is that like he'd be the only sane person in this world of madness. Every time somebody says something, he's like, "No, it's not. Are you kidding?" Like he is the voice of reason a lot of times in this movie. So I think it would be funny. But I mean, obviously Moses would be the first thing a lot of people.
The villain is always the human.
He said Moses.
Ooh.
I'm just just a little joke.
Look at the stunads on this guy.
Just a little jokey poo. Yeah, I don't know if the Muppet thing works for an animated film, but
it's a little different.
Yeah.
We did it with Batman, but I mean, with something like this, maybe it's weird because it's like
maybe it's Muppet Babies.
Everybody's a Muppet baby except for Jeff Goldblum. Okay, I support it.
And he's trying to corral these children while they're killing each other and doing
right.
And who is your who is your MVP in this story?
I think my MVP is SETI because of that performance by Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, I hate to be the Star Trek fanboy, but it was purely because he did a good job.
Oh, you hate to be the Star Trek fanboy? Really? Do you hate it?
Sure, Jan.
Well, in this instance, because I've already brought him up several times, but like, there's a really big scene in The Expanse, and I won't spoil it, but it's in the first, like, book, so it's not a huge spoiler either way, but there is a scene where somebody kills another person, and everybody's mad at them, and they're like, "Why did you kill that guy?" And he's like, "I didn't kill him because he was crazy. I killed him because he was making sense." And that's the way I looked at SETI in this story, was like, I hated him because the way he was framing it, he was so charismatic that I could see a lot of people falling sway to that. You could see Moses, if Moses was just like, all right, I guess it's just their sacrifices must be made, and not taking it to the next logical step.
Right.
So yeah, he was brilliant, I thought, for the little time, and he didn't have much screen time either. So
he was amazing, but I have to go with Yocheved. I'm sorry, like, the voice just kills me every time. She does such a wonderful job making that emotional plea, and so
yeah,
she's my MVP.
Yeah, they did play the mother aspect really well. They framed the beginning of the story in a way that I hadn't really thought of really deeply before, and for that, at least, this movie did a good job of conveying a message, a different perspective. I think it was done respectfully, so it wasn't like mocking any one religion. I think most Jewish people watching this would appreciate it, and I think even like people of other faiths, like Christians and Muslims, might also appreciate, because they're all branches kind of similar. They're all Judeo-Christians. So.
Abrahamic.
All Abrahamic. Yes, thank you. All Abrahamic. So anyways, the big question that we have then is, did you like the movie, and would you give it a thumbs up? Let's start, because it's Jamie's movie, let's start with Keith. What did you think?
You really want to do this? Here. Now? Yes. Okay. Okay. Let's do it!
I will give this a thumbs up because it is. We talked about how stellar the craft is. I'm slightly conflicted on the grounds that, like, religious stuff just isn't my thing, and I don't want to be the one like pushing religious text on people. But I mean, there's no world in which this is not a finely crafted, pretty great piece of animation. Just maybe watch a few years from now, like wait until the world comes to its sense, so it doesn't leave quite a sour taste in your mouth. But
will it ever come to its sense?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
we can hope. That's optimistic in itself. So
yep.
There's your daily optimism.
Right, I try to be optimistic. So yes, I do give it a thumbs up. But that comes with its own whole bag of worms. Definitely check out the opening song, "Deliver Us," because that was my favorite. What about you, Kelly? What did you think of this?
I actually would like to go last in this instance.
Okay.
So Jamie, and I have a reason for it, and I'll explain it, but go ahead, Jamie.
So I picked it because it is a movie that I do love. I love the songs in it. I love all of the songs in it. My favorite is the Plagues song, and the cast is phenomenal. There isn't a bad performance among them. Everybody is fabulous in their roles. The music is amazing. The animation is great, and every story is a story. Whether or not you want to make it a real life telling, or if it is a story, it is an amazing story. So thumbs up for me. So Kel?
All right, so my reasoning is going to be a little political here. I know, big surprise to anybody that's been listening to the show for a while or has known me for longer than, 10 minutes. But I am going to give it a thumbs down. And my reason is this. First off, the message of the story, I don't agree with the message, even though, it's not their fault, but it's the message that the Bible story kind of tells, and I don't agree with that message. I don't agree with the murder your neighbors if they've brought murder upon you kind of thing. Like, I'm not such a pacifist that I think that there isn't a reason why you wouldn't stand up for yourself, but anyways, I'm not going to get too deep into that. The big reason why I'm giving it a thumbs down is because I can't let our podcast give this a perfect rating. And I know that, yeah,
that's fair. I'm glad that...
Yeah, I know that Keith is giving it like a tentative thumbs up, like a borderline thumbs up. So I'm going to do the same thing that we often do, giving a borderline thumbs up. I'm going to give it a borderline thumbs down. Mine is going to be a thumbs down with an asterisk that says every single person involved with the creation of this did a wonderful job. It's the framing of it and the way that it's not been taken into account, and the overall message, with the subject matter. There are too many very important foibles and fumbles that I can't recommend this overall as a podcast. So I'm going to pull it single-handedly away from a perfect rating for our podcast.
No, that's fair. Cause like I said, I'm conflicted in that, but I being an artist, just the whole, I don't want to knock poo-poo on the craft and the art side of
Totally
things.
get it. Totally, because it's amazing. It's really well done. But here's another way that, if we were to, there have been times where we've had a hard time defining a thumbs up or a thumbs down because we're right on that border. And if one of the criteria we were using is, would you put this movie on again in the background? And my answer is probably no.
Yeah.
No. It's too intense to not pay attention to, but it's also the message, once you pay attention to it, I don't agree with a lot of that message, so I don't... It's easy to put Aladdin on in the background because it's lighthearted. This movie is not lighthearted, and good for them. Again, it feels weird that I'm giving them a thumbs down, but also patting them on the back for a well done job.
Great job. I didn't like it.
Yeah, great job making this thing that I'm never going to probably watch again. I might listen to that opening scene again because there were a couple songs that were interesting, but
isn't that the true mark of good art is that it really does.
Absolutely.
It is amazing, and he doesn't like it.
Yeah, and absolutely, and the good. I think about all the conversations that this spawned between us, and probably if we had somebody that was religious on the show, that had a very different interpretation. That would have been super interesting. If we were a little bit more prepared, maybe we would have looked up what some different synagogues had to say about this movie when it first came out, what different Christian groups said about this movie when it came out. They probably applauded it, and it probably was great for marketing for them, even though the marketing for the movie didn't do well.
I do know that it was something that was shown locally in a lot of churches for like Bible study and stuff. So yes.
And it's very true to the biblical story from what I've gathered. There are a couple of things they take liberties with, but they don't shy away from the power of God as evident as the evil sorcerer Moses.
Yeah, dark sorcerer Moses.
Yeah, and so I can imagine from a church point of view, this could be a lesson plan all in itself. Like like I said, I went to a private school. I could see having a substitute teacher and they put this movie on instead of whatever, because it's a lesson. I hate to use the word, it's a good lesson. It's a good lesson from their framing. And either way, like how do you deny the connection to nowadays? Like, part of me wants the Jewish people that are very pro genocide, or maybe they don't see it as pro-genocide, but the very Zionist entity in Israel, I'd want them to sit down and really think about this story again. Like,
right?
Don't you see how but then again, they look at it and say, yeah, exactly. God told us to take the children of the people that have wronged us. That's not the lesson.
And then you throw your arms up in exasperation. Yeah.
You dense motherfucker.
Well, see, that's the thing, but that's why you're giving it your thumbs down, right? Because isn't that the lesson? Right. That is the lesson.
Yeah, and the Star Trek fan in me will not abide with genocide is cool, bro, or infanticide is okay under the right circumstances.
Yeah, for the right people and the right reasons.
It's never okay to kill children. Why is this controversial? I don't understand why. Anyways.
Nothing justifies genocide.
So yeah, that was our take on Prince of Egypt. We hope you enjoyed listening to our very lighthearted, very easygoing conversation.
We might have to put some warnings on this one before we throw it up.
Oh my goodness. And the line that I wrote, what was it? Dead kids all over the place. Oh my God, that's how do I not use that as the title?
Can't take a step in Egypt without stepping on a dead kid. This is terrible.
So yeah, what did you think of the movie? Yeah. Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Let us know on social media. We've got Facebook, we've got TikTok, we've got Discord, we've got whatever. Come see us at ko-fi.com/screenshare if you want to support the podcast financially. We would much appreciate it. We talked a couple weeks ago about doing not really a contest, but when people leave us reviews, we're going to go back and read some of those positive reviews back to you. Well, they've all been positive so far. I better knock on wood. But we're going to read a couple of those. So if you're hearing the sound of my voice and you want to hear our voices say your words, it's easy. Just say something really nice about us, and maybe you'll hear our voices saying your words. So next week, we are going to finish up our 90s animated series before we head into the Christmas season. As much as people hate Christmas, we are going to do some Christmas specials for y'all coming up. But one last jaunt into the animated world, and it's going to be Keith's choice. And you said you've picked. Are you going to tell us or hint at it? Or
Sure. We're going to watch a completely non-controversial animated movie called South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut.
Yes!
Oh, thank God I swallowed my coffee before you said that.
And Kelly's computer equipment completely ruined my coffee.
Look, it's just a preview. It's all kinds of problematic. It's from 1999. It's also one of the funniest movies that I've ever seen in my life. And
I've watched it so many times. I will not have notes that I actually take on that movie because I've seen it so many times.
And I'm in this weird place where I've seen it a few times back in the day, enough that I understand a lot of the jokes and I can sing a couple of the songs from it and stuff like that. But I now haven't seen it in 15, 20 years. Like, I haven't seen it since I got my degree or anything like that. So like, it would be so interesting for me I was thinking the other day that I wanted to go back and rewatch it, but I was waiting because I didn't want to. It's weird when you do a podcast about movies. There are so many movies that I'm like, ooh, I want to watch. I'm going to wait.
Oh, I better not watch that. Yeah.
I'm going to wait. Yeah. I'm going to save that for the pod maybe. So then I'm like depriving myself of, because I wanted to watch The Witch, but I wasn't sure if we were going to watch that during Halloween time. Now I feel comfortable. Maybe I'm just going to watch The Witch because that looks so good. Yeah. I haven't seen it yet. So
I watched it the other day because I was afraid Keith wasn't going to end up picking it, although he had tipped his hat early on and said that was probably going to be his pick. I put it on while I was doing housework because I've seen it enough times that I don't need to watch it. So I had it on the background because I was like, if we don't pick it, I'm going to be sad. So I'm going to put it on.
So that's coming next week. I'm sure we'll have quite a few things
wonderful
to say about that.
Satan and Saddam Hussein and
it will. There's no way to not make that offensive. Like it's offensive. It's so offensive, but it equally offends literally everybody.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've said, and I'll say this again next week. I'll keep this quick, but there's the whole don't punch down, punch up. South Park does an omnidirectional blast in every direction, and so sometimes that involves getting the punch down, but they're also punching up, and we're gonna talk about it. It's gonna be a lovely mess.
They're less of a punch, more of a bomb.
Yeah, and I don't know if that excuses it. I don't know if that makes it okay, but we'll talk about it. That's why I'm super curious how I'm going to see it with my current eyes, how my current perspective. Am I gonna find it? I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that it's just gonna be so fucking funny that whatever little bit of that might not have been the right thing to say will just be overridden by.
Yeah, there's only two things that we'll get into in that movie that give me even enough to take pause. So I'm sure those are a couple things we'll be talking about.
Yep.
But anyway, for Screen Share and Chill, I am Keith.
I'm Kelly.
I'm Janie.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you all later. Don't kill children.
Don't do it.
There's no rationalization for genocide or killing people in general. Just don't do it, please.
Yeah, don't be a dick.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a great message. Don't be a dick.
Everybody should follow Wheaton's law. Don't be a dick.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to call the police. You go ahead, call them. Call anybody you want. They can't do anything to me. Not anymore.
Nothing justifies genocide.